Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Pamela Godbois, who is a therapist turned business and development coach and a yoga instructor. I'll let her tell you a little bit more about herself in just a moment, but I do want to let you know that I had the pleasure of being a guest on her podcast called the Out of Your Mind podcast, which we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. So first of all, let me give a warm welcome to Pam. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And so why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and the viewers today?
Sure. So my name is Pam Godbois, as you said. I am a therapist, I've been a therapist for 20 years and a yoga teacher. And I've taken the leap over the last year or so, really leaning into working with female entrepreneurs. I love working with moms. I've come to realize that I've never called out working with mom, but then as I look at all the people I work with, I'm like, wow, everybody's moms and they're all dealing with the mom things, which you and I talked about when you were on my podcast, right?
We did.
The struggle.
Our 13-year-olds.
Yes. So the struggle of being moms in this day and age, and whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you're a mom who's trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. I've had so many people say to me recently, so I'm not the same person I was when I chose this career now that I have kids. And so that's the work that I love to do. I love to help people figure out their path and give them all the tools and resources, both, mindset and inner work and all that shit, but also the business strategies, because I am a business coach. So.
Wow. So what inspired you to lean more toward business coaching?
So it's funny. I have a tendency, my personality is such that I have a tendency when I'm done with this thing, I'm done with it. I slam the door shut and throw a padlock on it and I never look back. And in this transition where I was like, okay, I need to step out of being a therapist and move forward. I was doing a lot of working with people on mindset. And I was like, oh, I want to lean into business coaching. I'm going to do business coaching. And so I started doing business coaching one-on-one with women. And something really interesting happened. I realized that I hated talking about business strat. I hate talking about, I don't want to talk for an hour in a session about what your strategy for your Instagram is going to be for the next month so that you can launch your program. I want to help you cultivate the inner world so that you have the skills, right? Because the inner, the confidence and the willingness and the ability to step into the challenges, that's the work that I want to do. So I was like, yeah, I'm business coaching. And then I was like, I have all the things, and I teach people how to create a course, how to launch a course, how to market, all of those things. But we always do it from the frame of what's the barrier, what's getting in the way. And 9 times out of 10, for most of us, it's not I don't know how to do the thing. It's, I don't feel comfortable doing the thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So okay. And you may have already answered this question, but what was the determining factor for you to transition from therapy to business coaching? Did you do any of that? I mean, did you how do I phrase this question? I know therapy is different from business coaching, but
yeah,
what was the transition point for you?
So another piece of my personality is I have a tendency to kind of wait for something a little larger than me to give me a swift boot in the butt to make a change, right? I'm like, I'm going to do this thing. And then I'll just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. And then, and I have I can't even tell you the amount of examples I have, but one really clear example is I live in a small town in New Hampshire, and I was renting office space as a therapist in a town half an hour away in the small state of New Hampshire, which is kind of ridiculous. And my next door neighbor said to me, why do you drive there every day? Why don't you just rent space in town? And I was like, that's a good question. Why don't I just rent space in town? It was something that I hadn't even thought of. It wasn't something that I was like, oh yeah, I just can't find space. I was like, why don't I rent space? So then I was going to, so this question he probably asked me this in October. And I was like, yeah. And then the following February 1st, I showed up at my office And I rented like an office in an office building that all these individual offices were rented. And there was only a couple of us left in the building. And I was like, he's going to rent the whole space out. And he did. So I arrived on February 1st to a notice under my door because I didn't have a lease. Because I had been there for so long. He was like, it's fine. And he was like, hey, I'm renting out as of March 1st, I'm renting out the entire floor of the building to this company. So you need to leave. And I was like, okay. So on my way home that day, I stopped in at the physical therapy office in town. And it was people I know, like, cause I'm also a yoga instructor. So I know them from the gym and whatever. And so I popped in and I was like, hey, do you guys happen to have space that I could rent from you? And they were like, yeah, actually, it was an old house. They're like, we just remodeled one of the rooms on the other side of the building. And we're looking for a medical professional that's not a physical therapist to rent the space. And I was like, how about me? And so I did. So then my office for the last 4 or 5 years I was in practice, my office went from my commute went from a half an hour to about, I could walk to work. Basically.
Wow.
I literally walked to my office. And so that's like my typical story. And so what happened this time was I had been saying for about 2 years that I needed to close my practice and move on to coaching, because I had been coaching. So the shift into actual coaching came when other therapists were coming to me saying, how do you have such a successful therapy practice? How do you have so many therapy clients? I never relied on outside sources I didn't have to like advertise anywhere. I always got referrals from the clients that I was working with, and my practice was always full. I always had a waiting, like people were like constantly, on a weekly basis, I would get 4 or 5 calls about therapy because so-and-so had given me your number and I know you're fantastic and blah, blah, blah. And so I just started doing some work with some of those therapists, and it wasn't charging them. It wasn't like I was officially doing business coaching, but I was talking to them about different strategies. One of which is you got to do your own inner work, because if you don't, people see it and you get burnt out and you can't be of service to other people if you're not taking care of yourself. And then there was other like business type strategies, because I have a master's degree in social work, and nowhere in my education did anyone say, here are the strategies that you need to run a business.
I know.
It's not taught. So the way that my brain works, I just figured it out. I just was like, all right, just figure these things out. And so then I started teaching it to people. I started saying like, oh, these are the things you need. Try this, do that. How about this? Have you tried this? Have you gone here? Have you connected with these people? Have you, marketing and all these different things. And slowly I was like, oh, I really like this. But I think I liked it because a lot of the work that I was doing with these other therapists was their own inner work. So we're doing all these like marketing pieces and business building pieces and business strategy and developing programming and all that stuff. Niching, as a therapist, there's such a rare thing to be like, I only accept, unless you work if I work at an agency that only works with kids, then I guess my niche is kids. But, we have a tendency to just be like, I'll just take whatever you give me. And so, I started helping therapists change that tendency. And then slowly I was like, I really love this. I want to do this work. And so for about 2.5 years, I was like, I need to just do this work and not do therapy anymore. I started charging people. I started creating programs and courses, and I created some stuff for yoga teachers. And I just was like embracing it and loving it. And then in true Pam fashion, I waited for something to kick me in the butt. And in June of 2021, I went into a full heart block, which means that I no longer had an electrical signal from the top of my heart to the bottom of my heart.
Ooh.
It just stopped. And there's no medical, to this day, almost a year later, 11 months later, there's no medical cause. They have no medical reason why this happened. And so I was like, okay. So being the energy, let me meditate, let me talk to my energy worker, let me do some Reiki and clear out what's going on. The message that I kept getting from all the people that I worked with and from my own sitting in practice was that this was not a biological thing. This was an energetic thing. And so the statement that I make all the time is, you can't hold on to 20 years of people's heartbreak and have it not impact you.
No, you can't.
So that was like that happened. And I was like, okay, that's it. End of the year, I'm done. And so I ended up closing my therapy practice in December of 2021. And it's the best thing I ever did. Love it.
Wow. So what, okay, so what, I know you work with women, but what types of businesses do you help them start?
So I love helping, when I think about like women and moms, one of the things that is at a premium is time, right? We don't have a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many responsibilities and so many things on our plate. And so I don't want anyone and on the planet to have to trade their time for a rate. Like, I don't want anyone to be like, I charge, X number of dollars an hour. And so the businesses that I help women start and build and scale are businesses that are not trading dollar for hour, but they're providing a service. So it might be a membership program for, moms who are, dealing with the stressors of the day to day. And, because I work with I work with a lot of yoga teachers and therapists and natural practitioners, because that's just where I come from. So those are the people that like I know, and that have grown in that area, and that's like gotten bigger and bigger. So what I do is I help women create online programming that they can offer from anywhere, that is group or evergreen programming, something that they can do live or something that they can just offer and people can buy it, so that they don't have to be tied to like a 9 to 5, because that's next to impossible when you have kids, if you want to be able to, be part of the kids doing the kids things, right? Whether it's volunteering at the school or after school activities or whatever. They're busy little beings, and it's hard to do all the things. And so I want to help women embrace their natural magic, the gifts that they have, the things that they know, the things that are like innate within them, and turn that into a service-based online business that they can help other people transform their lives.
I don't know about the because I'm still building my business, but I don't like that charging by the hour either. I can look at the out like for my editing service, I can look at the hourly rate and then base it off of, like, say they give an estimated page count, pace, work pace, like 6 pages per hour, for example. I can take that and divide that by the pay, and divide that by how much it would cost per page, like the 6 pages per hour times so many dollars per hour, and then you divide that by 6, and then you figure out how many pages the manuscript is, and then you go with a rate like that. That was just an example, because I haven't actually started it yet, but I was looking at that because I'm finishing up an editing course, which we can talk about that a little bit later. But I am,
Sure.
and I've talked to, as we record this, and I talked to an editor yesterday. That was fun. But anyway, so instead of doing the hourly thing, because I'll get phone calls, my nieces and nephew will come in, or when my daughter's here, she'll need something, or whatever. So I kind of like that idea. That
Yeah. I think that I always say to people, like, charge by the like the product or the offering and I do a lot of work around money mindset, because I think as women in the helping fields in particular, we have this idea, and I have somebody right now, I have a free 30-day abundance challenge, that's free right now. It's not gonna be free forever, but it's free right now. And I have somebody walking through, I have a bunch of people walking through, but one person in particular commented the other day, there's a section on like money mindset, and she's like, well, I don't want to manifest money, I just want my business to do well. And I'm like, well, how will you know if your business is doing well? You'll know because you'll increase the dollar amount that's coming in, right? Like, that's how you'll know. So, but we have this like aversion, we there's like shame associated with wanting money. Like, we attribute like wanting money to being greedy or stingy or selfish, and that's just not true. That's just not true. And I think that's one of the things that we struggle with in particular as women, is like embracing our value and charging what we're worth.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm working
Yeah.
toward too myself. So let's talk about, since you started working with your business coaching, now you just started a podcast. Tell me what got that started.
So in like another thing, like I'm one of those people, my husband and I, we talk about this. We were talking about this the other day, that like, as moms, as women, like we get to decide who we want to be. And I said, I was talking about like ladies who lunch. And I was like, I could never be a lady. Could you imagine me being a lady who lunches? And he's like, well, first of all, you'd have to put on something other than yoga pants. And I was like, true. And that's never happening. Once in a while, they catch me in jeans. Like when I have a pair of jeans on, people are like, whoa, where are you going? That's so fancy that you need jeans. But being a yoga teacher forever, I have a closet full of yoga pants. So that's what I wear. Like fancy, expensive yoga pants, but yoga pants nonetheless. And so we were talking about that. And he's like, I also can't imagine you being in a position where your brain is not challenged. And I was like, absolutely, like 1000%. I need my brain to be challenged. It's who I am. I've always like, I'm going to learn this new thing. I'm going to take on this new task. Right now I'm learning how to play the guitar. And it seems to be challenging my fingertips more than it's challenging my brain currently. But that's one of the things I'm like, all right, I gotta be doing new things. I gotta be, bringing new things into my world. And when I decided I was closing my therapy practice, I was in a group coaching program, a larger coaching program, doing marketing and whatever. And one of the things that they asked us to do is to set like a big, hairy, scary goal, something that we could never imagine ourselves doing, but that we were going to do anyway. And so I was like, I think I'm going to start a podcast. This was November of last year. I'm going to start a podcast. That's what I'm going to do. Start a podcast. And his instruction was like, pick what it is, pick the date, and then like figure out how you're going to execute it. And I was like, I'm going to start a podcast on February 22nd. And I'm going to interview people. And then I'm talking to like my team. I have there's 3 of us, right? Huge team. There's 3 of us. But we're sitting around, the 3 of us, having this conversation. We're on a Zoom call. And I'm like, what am I going to do? What is my podcast going to be about? What am I going to interview people about? And do I even know how to interview? Am I any good at it? And one of the women on my team said to me, what are you passionate about? What do you want to hear about? And I said, I want to hear people's stories. Like, I want to hear, and I know in my being at this point that it's because I was a therapist for so long. I'm like, I want to hear the struggle that people have gone through, the things they've overcome, the triumphs that they've experienced, and how all of that has helped them to be successful in what they're doing. Because my premise and what I teach is that you cannot experience success to the degree that you would like to experience success until you do your own work. You have to do you have to look at the mess, the inner messiness, right? And we all have it. So it's not like I want to listen to your messiness and judge you for your mess. We're all messy. And as listeners of the podcast, people have the opportunity to recognize like, oh, hey, I'm not alone. Like, this person's gone through this struggle. I'm not alone. Maybe there's something that I can take away from this. And I ask that, right? And, you've been on the podcast. I ask that, like, what's something that you would offer? What's something that our listeners can take away? And so that was one of the reasons I started the podcast. The other reason I started the podcast was because I'm an entrepreneur. And as entrepreneurs, you work at home by yourself without other people. And I was getting pretty sick of looking at my own 4 walls. And I was like, I need to make new friends. And so I was like, I'm going to start a podcast so I can make new friends. And whether it's like, people that I talk to regularly, and there's a couple of those, or whether it's like people that I come back to, or like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I just love to connect with other human beings. And so that was like kind of jokingly, tongue in cheek. I was like, I'm going to start a podcast so I can make some friends. And it has been amazing. The people that I interviewed in the first 2 months of the new year, I interviewed 25 people. It was a lot. And then I put a hold on interviews because I'm still launching episodes from those. It's May when we're recording this episode. And I'm still launching episodes that I recorded in February, that I recorded in like February and March. It's just how many people, I interviewed. So, and I started the podcast with 10 episodes. So this Friday will be episode number 25. And I have a couple of solo episodes in there, and I have an episode with my neighbor. We're doing this month a series for moms But yeah, I'm in love with it. I'm like, how can I quit everything else and just host a podcast and interview people? Like, can I just do that forever? I have people telling me all the time, actually, yeah, you can. I'm like, okay, we'll figure that out. That'll be the next stage. But
I don't know. Depends on how many listeners what your listenership is, and
right.
whether you can get sponsors and support and stuff like that. I mean, I've been doing this for 3 years and I'm still not making a lot of money on it. But that's not the reason. That's not the main reason why I did mine. But
Right.
you did yours a different way than I did mine. I didn't pre-record a lot of episodes. I just planned and got started, and then was doing episodes sometimes on the daily, sometimes a few days a week, sometimes I do 2 in a day, when I first started. And then I realized Tuesday is my day to
Yep.
launch, to do things. And now I'll do solos on like Thursday or Friday, something like that. But with these interviews these last couple of years, it's been Tuesdays, and I will schedule them ahead of time. And that's,
Yep.
I've got over, probably, if not over 300, maybe right at 300. I'd have to go look. But
that's awesome.
yeah, so this is like, I'm in season. I mean, I quit marking them because I didn't start it, and I haven't. And I tried to start it, but it didn't. That didn't work, because sometimes I'd launch some episodes before, and I would say the numbers, and they wouldn't be in order. So
right.
yeah. So I just quit trying to track all that, because if you don't start it, you don't start it to begin with, you're not gonna start it later.
Right.
You're not in the habit.
That's so true.
So so what do you hope listeners can take away from the podcast?
Well, I guess my hope with anyone that I talk to, whether it's on the podcast, whether it's had a phone conversation with somebody yesterday about something for my daughter, it had nothing to do with anything I was doing. It was not like a work thing. It was a school thing. I was talking to somebody at the school about my daughter, and I was on the phone with her for an hour and a half. And it turned into a coaching session, because educators are burnt out, right? They're overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are parents, a lot of them are moms. And this happened to be a mom that I was talking to that was like, I am like, this whole world is it's making it tough. And I was like, yeah, she joked, and she said, sometimes I say, I'm going to go start a job. I'm going to go get a job at Starbucks instead. And I said, I used to say Target. Like that was my, so I think the recognition that we all, we're living in a, I don't know if it's actually a post-pandemic, who knows, but like we're living in a world that has been very drastically different over the last couple of years. And as a result, our rates of mental health struggles are up. Domestic violence is up, conflict is up, adolescents are more anxious, they're more overwhelmed, they're more stressed, they're more depressed, as are the parents. And I think that as human beings, if we can step back and recognize the importance of taking care of our own beings, our own selves, and allowing that taking care of self to be something that encourages or inspires us to be kind and compassionate to another human being, it's only going to make the world a better place. And I think we're stuck in this, like, for so many reasons, there's a lot of us that are kind of like hunkering down. And like, I'm just going to take care of my family, myself. I'm not going to, screw the outside world, basically. And we need each other. Like, as human beings, we need each other. And we need to show up for each other. We need to, and that means that we've got to each look at, what do we need in our own lives to feel more joyful, to feel more connected, to feel more grounded, to feel more of the thing that we're not currently feeling, right? Or we're not feeling we're not feeling enough of. And so embracing, first of all, recognizing what that is, and then starting to look at, how do I do that? Like, if I am saying I need more joy in my life, how do I get more joy in my life? Because I can guarantee you that doing the exact same thing that you did today and you did yesterday and you did the day before, if it's not already bringing you joy, it's not gonna. So figuring out, what do I need more of? And then what do I do to do that? And it doesn't have to be big things, but I will just warn everyone that's listening, if you are not feeling like the breaks that you're getting, as large or as minimal as they are enough, then chances are they're not enough. And you need to probably do some deeper work, right? Because like, that's when you start to get to the place where you're like, the weekends are not long enough, vacations are not rejuvenating enough. It's a really good indicator that you're probably burnt out. And once we're burnt out, like there's all this stuff online and you can look up like burnout prevention and it'll tell you all these things to do. But the truth is that most of us don't do anything until we're already there. And prevention doesn't work anymore when you're already there. Right? Like you can't prevent burnout if you're already burnt out. You can't prevent, substance use if you're already using substances. Like, like in kids, we're like, oh, the DARE program, we're going to prevent drug and alcohol use in kids. But if they're already using, it's too late, right? You know what I mean? Like there's those types of things. And you have to recognize that most of us don't seek help or support until we're already, until it's too late. And not that it's too late, like you can do the work, but until it's too late for prevention, right? Like,
yeah, it's like you're already there. Instead of preventing it, you gotta.
Yeah.
And I honestly, and I've been burned out on a couple of things, and I've been through some tough times, and and I had to find what brought me joy. And if you're not happy with what you're doing, then you need to find out what makes you happy. You need to find out, and I'm gonna put it from the Christian perspective because that's just me. But you need to find out what God's calling you to do. And the writing, the podcast, it was a calling, and now the editing is a calling because I find that I have that strong skill set helping people, enhance their work.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what that's what and it's fun. And if you're not having fun at it, then if you're not having fun if you're not having fun doing what you're doing as far as work, the type of work you're doing, you got to figure out what work is fun, because when you love doing it, it's no longer work.
Right. And even if it is work, even if there's components of it that are work, I mean, think about your kids, or a kid, whether you have kids or not, right? Like, so a kid that a 6 or 7 year old, they're so excited about what the future holds for them that, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they come up with the craziest things, and they're like, I'm going to be a pet. My neighbor's 5-year-old was like, I'm going to be a pet, like therapist or something, like some sort of like, I'm gonna like take care of pets, and I'm gonna do this other thing, and I'm gonna like perform, and I'm gonna, like, we just have all these, I'm gonna be an actress, I'm gonna be a dancer, I'm gonna be I want to express myself. And you look at children, and I really do mean kids before the life stress hits them. And certainly there are some kids that hit that life stress early because of trauma and that kind of stuff. But like those kids that are like early elementary school or younger, what they seek joy, right? It doesn't matter. I mean, think how many times, if you're a parent, how many times you said to your kid, like, don't do that thing because you could get hurt, but that thing's fun. So they do it anyway. And then if they fall off of it, you're like, see, I told you. And they're like, what are you talking about? Because they don't have the ability to control that impulse. It just is like, I just want it.
Filter like we do.
Right. But like, maybe we should go back to some of that though. Like maybe we should go back to embracing that, like just seeking joy.
Yeah, I'm learning that because I was writing mysteries from my writing side of things. I have a mystery that I've been working on, and some of the books I've done, I'm trying to rebrand them. And I find that I love to read mysteries, but writing them is hard. Where I find the fun is I love my poetry. I've gotten some poetry, but where I find the fun is writing children's fantasy chapter books.
Yeah.
Because I crocheted my toys.
Yep.
And and that's what inspired me. And I love reading those books too. But that's what brings me joy in the writing. And then
Yep.
editing also brings me joy, and it's help, and I'm helping others too. So,
Yeah. I mean, well, and you think about it, like kids fantasy chapter books, those are like,
that's at the
that's,
age when you believe in magic.
yes, with everything's magical. And that's part of the
Mhm.
reason why, like in my branding, I say like what I do is I help women work through the crap, uncover what's going on underneath and clear it out so that they can find their magic again. Because we all
Mhm.
have it. It's in us. It lives within us. And whether
Yeah.
that's magical thinking or whether that's just the magic of like who we, like how many times in our lives have you had somebody say to you, like, oh, you're just so good at that. Oh, you're such a natural at that. Oh, you're just like, you're so amazing at this thing. And we're like, what? No, sir. I don't know what you're talking about. But what if we could just embrace that magic? That is our magic. The thing that other
Mhm.
people point out and go, hey, that's so amazing about you. That's your magic.
Yeah,
Own it.
there's your magic. I mean,
Yeah.
the magic in fantasies is not the magic of the real world, but there is real, and it doesn't have to be evil magic either. Mine is not,
Mhm.
except for one, the villain has a evil spell, but that's beside the point. Um, but still, there's that magic, that thing that makes you shine. The one thing
Yes.
you do that makes you shine, that's your magic. And the one thing that God, and I'm gonna say it like this, because I know you've talked to other Christian people on your podcast. The
Yep.
one thing I'm gonna say is the thing that God has called you to do. And when the Holy Spirit is working through you, that's your magic.
Mm-hmm.
That's the magic God gave you. Own
Yes.
it, people.
Yeah. And so often we think this is what happens is and I'm seeing it in talking with the educator yesterday, and I'm seeing it in like the world because I'm one of those people that observes everything, is that we're pushing our kids at younger and younger ages to succeed from like an academic, your grades need to be this. And we get these kids thinking in like 8th grade about college and career. And we're having these conversations about like why this is so important and stability is really important. We're having these conversations and I'm like, F that, F stability, like dream big. And so my kid is one that's like my daughter, who is 13 years old, wants to be a pastry chef and she wants to go to culinary school in Paris. And I'm like, great, let's make it happen.
And
There's my why. That's why I'm an entrepreneur, is so that I
exactly.
can have the financial resources to send her to Paris. And oh, by the way, when I send her to Paris, she's in 7th grade right now, I'll also be buying an apartment in Paris so that I can be there whenever I want.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I don't think my daughter knows what she wants to be yet.
Yeah. And this is just because, going back to what do you love? She loves baking. She's 13 years old. She has a gluten-free cupcake business. And she has parents who are like, do it. You want to do that thing? Do it. We'll help you. What do you
She
need?
Sharon likes crocheting pillows.
Yeah.
Because I
You
taught
just
her,
gotta,
no, I taught her the simple crochet stuff, and that's something she loves. She's trying to make a blanket, but she's got all these pillows that she's made, and
yeah.
she likes putting things together. She likes making jewelry. You know, she's
Yes.
a crafty type person, and I'm like, go for it.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get her to read and trying to get her, but she can't be me. And
Correct.
what's funny? You talk about these young kids. When she was like 5, there were two things
Mhm.
she wanted to do. I want to play a violin when I grow up. I want to be a writer like mommy when I grow up. That
Mm.
just melted my heart. And now she's like, ugh, I hate reading. She likes to read Wattpad. She doesn't like
Mhm.
to read print.
And and that's okay. I mean, Marley, when she was probably that age, I was teaching yoga, and she was going to be a yoga teacher when she grew up. That was her, like, but that's not what she wanted. But it was just like, I mean, I think there's a time frame there where our kids are like, when they want to do the things that we're doing, that's their way of expressing how much they admire us.
Uh
And that's
huh.
great. That's great. But it doesn't mean we need to shape them, right? So if you're like an accountant and your kid at 4 years old is like, I'm going to be an accountant like mom or like dad, like that's great if that's what they grow up to be. But chances are they're going to go through a phase where it's all about the magic,
Oh,
and you got to just embrace where they are. And when you can embrace where they are, then you can embrace where you are. Right. When you're
right.
like,
And I wanted to be a singer when I was 5 years old. I'm not a professional singer, but I still love to sing. But
yeah,
still, life happens. Things change. You grow and change, and you develop into you got to learn who you are.
yeah.
You got that's the one thing about that. So, um, because I mean, we could talk all day about this,
I
but
know.
yeah, I want to know what, and you inspired me to do this. What takeaway do you want to leave our listeners and viewers with today?
I would say that if you can take away one thing, what I would like you to hang on to is that anything that you dream up for yourself, whether it's a career, whether it's a passion, whether it's learning an instrument, whether it's, traveling, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Anything, like, I would love you to just close your eyes and think about, if Pam had a magic wand and could wave it over me and give me one thing, what would it be? And what would I do with that thing? What would I do with that gift, that opportunity, that experience? What would I do with it? And then see, okay, so without the magic wand, how can I get there? Like, what are the things that I can do to get there? Right. And one of the questions that I ask all the time in my group coaching program is, I say, if I gave you, this is when we're doing niching, I say, if I gave you $1 million right now, no strings attached, you can do whatever you want with it. Here's your $1 million. Everybody gets $1 million in their bank account. Pam, I'm very generous. Here's your $1 million. What would you be doing? What would you be doing? If I just handed you $1 million, what would you be doing with your life? And that usually gets at the thing that we really are passionate about, that we really love, that we would do because it's something that we love, not because it's something that we think is going to make us money.
Right.
But
Well,
at the end of the day, anything can make you money.
right. But I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to take that challenge.
Yeah.
Because when I was a teenager, I had way different thoughts than I do now. If I had $1 million, I would finish take all these editing courses I need.
Mm-hmm.
B, once I get my book done, hire an editor and formatter to do my and stuff to get my books out there.
Mm-hmm.
And C, go out there and talk to people and teach them what I've learned.
Yeah.
I don't have to be rich. I mean, I may do a couple add-ons to the house, but
Sure.
but those are minor things.
I would redo my bathroom. I definitely, if somebody just handed me $1 million, I'd be like, redoing that bathroom. Hate that bathroom.
I would add on a second bedroom and maybe add a little bit more to this living room, because I love my tiny house. Don't get me wrong, but there could be a few little improvements that I could make. But
Sure.
For the most part, I would do what I love. I would continue to write and publish my books. I would continue to learn about editing, and find and then I'd know how to, and then learn how to set my, learn the business part, editing. But I'd use that money to learn what I could, launch my business, and then turn around and teach, and even go as far as the coaching, and then turn around and teach people what I've learned.
Yeah.
Give it back.
I think the thing that we need to remember is that we already have so much knowledge and wisdom within us. And there are people behind us, right, on the journey that we're on, that are behind us, that can use what you have currently. And so we have a tendency to wait until we, get the degree or the certification or all the trainings or all the things. But I always say, why not start now? And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be out there charging millions of dollars doing coaching. You can just be offering, like in your example, Anne, of helping people to get started in their writing and embracing it and seeing it as a path for them. You could just simply start by speaking about the journey and encouraging people to lean into, because one of the things you said to me on my podcast was you didn't think that you could write poetry. Exactly. And then you started writing poetry and you were like, oh, look at that. I can write poetry. Who knew? Right?
Yeah, so exactly. I can't.
Those types of things could be so inspiring. And it might not be that you're out talking to adults doing business coaching. Maybe you're showing up and talking to middle schools, right? Mm-hmm. And you're saying hey, I would love to come into this middle school and talk about potentials for careers for these kids that maybe don't think that, that they have what they need. They don't think that they're smart enough or capable enough, but they're super creative, and and you're like, oh yeah, there's still poets out there. There's still people that are writing books and making money. It's not just poetry that you look at, you're not just talking Dylan Thomas, right? Where there's still poets out there writing poetry. So if that's your thing.
And I'm going to put together a second poetry book. I may not have made $1 million on it, but if I can touch one life, I've done my job. So I'm going to go out there. And for you listeners and viewers out there, those of you watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment. Those of you listening to the podcast, you can leave a voicemail. I'll put a question on Spotify so you can answer it there. Or you can tag me on social media once this podcast airs. And I'll probably put it on social media even before that. If you had $1 million, what would you do with it? That's the question. That's for you to think about. You can journal it. And I'm going to put that out on social media. So do tag me so that I can see your posts. So please do let us know. What would you do if you had $1 million?
Yeah. And I just want to add one thing. Imagine that you were gifted $1 million with no strings attached. So that you don't have to, it's not like you don't have to this is not one of those, if I had $1 million, then I would give my 3 nieces and nephew X amount of money to go to college and all that's fine. But let's erase that for a moment. Just imagine that everybody in your life has everything that they need. What would you do if you were gifted $1 million with no strings attached?
And you don't have to pay taxes on it. It's
nothing. There's no strings. There's nothing. There's no strings. You just have $1 million. Free money. And now you can go out in the world and do what you want to be doing. What would that be?
Exactly. That's our big challenge for you today. So where can people find you online?
I hang out on the gram, on Instagram. I'm on Instagram at the Yogini Pam. At Yogini Pam. I don't know where the came from. At Yogini Pam. And I'm at Yogini Pam on most social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Pam Godbois, I think. But that is probably the best place to find me. That or listen to my podcast at the Out of Your Mind, the Out of Your Mind podcast. You can probably hear from this conversation that title came from me. I said to a friend of mine, hey, who's an author and is like Miss Pun. I was like, if I were to start a podcast that is me, that is like me wrapped into a statement, what would it be? And she said, the Out of Your Mind podcast. And I was like, sold. So that's a good place to find me as well.
Yep. And also, if you guys want to hear the conversation that Pam and I had on her podcast, I will be linking that in the description on the podcast, the YouTube, Perfect. And in my show notes on my website. So there will be links to that conversation as well. So now my final challenge that I leave everybody with, we challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. For when you've touched one life, you've touched thousands. Thanks for joining us on Inspirational Journeys. And remember, your story matters. Don't forget our big challenge today. See you next week and have a blessed day.